If you liked the video, feel free to subscribe. It would really help the channel, and we have battle reports, boarding actions, and list videos. Thanks for watching. Thanks for stopping by. This video is a bit late, but it's better than never. I will be touching on the few changes that affect the Salamanders using the Firestorm Assault Force from the December 2024 Dataslate. I also have two lists for the new year. One is a transport heavy list that leans on those stratagems that support our transports. The other list is a more infantry heavy list, using the change of Oath of Moment with some of the offensive stratagems to make an aggressive Salamanders list. Now let's go over some of those December 2024 Dataslate changes that has affected the Salamanders. The Infernus Marines has got quite the glow up. Their Pyroblasters gain -1 AP, so now they're Strength 5, AP 1, Damage 1. If you have Vulcan Hastan in your list, your Infernus Squad will now be OC 2 instead of OC 1. Their ability to cause a Battle Shock test, you now subtract 1 from that Battle Shock test as well. They've gone up by 10 points for 5 or 20 points for 10, which is reasonable with all these buffs. The Scout Squad has also gone up by 5 points for 5 or 10 points for 10. There has been some other point changes, but those are the main two that has affected the Salamanders. There's also a few core changes to the rules that has affected the Salamanders. Stratagems that allow that 3-inch deep strike are now 6 inches. We didn't really have any access to that unless we were using Inceptors, but this will help keep our own home field objective a little bit more safe. Stratagems that worsen the armored penetration, like Armour of Contempt, only work against one single target enemy. So if an enemy unit targets you and you use Armour Contempt, it only works against that one enemy that you use it against. The Captain in Gravis Armor, his ranged weapon, it's gained an extra damage, so now it's damage 3. The Repulsor Executioner's transport capacity has gone up to 7, so now you can fit a full unit of Blade Guard and a Captain or Adrax or something like that. Those are the big changes that has affected the Salamanders. There is also a change to Oath of Moment, and we'll get into that when we go over the Salamanders. Now let's move on to these two Salamanders lists. We'll start with the Space Marine Army rule, which has seen some changes. If your army is not Black Templars, Blood Angels, Dark Angels, Death Watch, or Space Wolves, you can actually get +1 to wound against your Oath of Moment target. And since Salamanders are not one of those divergent chapters, they would benefit from that +1 to wound from the Oath of Moment. So now we would get reroll the hits and +1 to wound to that enemy Oath of Moment target. The Firestorm Assault Force Detachment rule, close range eradication. Ranged weapons equipped by Adeptus Astartes models from your army have the assault ability, and each time an attack is made with such a weapon that targets a unit within 12 inches, add 1 to the strength characteristic of that attack. The first list that we will go over is our infantry heavy list. I've named this one the Pyro Drakes. It's 2,000 points exactly. Our Warlord is Vulcan Hastan. Characters, Adrax Agaton, a Lieutenant with the Champion of Humanity Enhancement, the Neo-Volkite Pistol, Mastercrafted Power Weapon and Storm Shield, a Captain in Gravis Armor with that War-Tempered Artifice with a Power Fist, Relic Fist, and Boltstorm Gauntlet. For our other data sheets, we have a 6-man Aggressor Squad unit with the Firestorm Gauntlets, a 6-man Blade Guard Veteran Squad, a 6-man unit of Eradicators with 4 Melta Rifles and 2 Multi-Meltas, then a smaller Eradicator Squad with 2 Melta Rifles and a Multi-Melta, a big 10-man Infernus Squad, an Infiltrator Squad for sitting on our home objective, a Land Raider Redeemer, which we are going to put our Captain in Gravis Armor with the Aggressors, a Redemptor Dreadnought with the Macroplasma, Icarus Rocket Pod, and Heavy Flamer, and then finally, 2 5-man units of Scout Squads. The enhancements that are in this list, Champion of Humanity, that is on our Lieutenant, while the bear is leading a unit. Models in that unit ignore any or all modifiers to their characteristic or to any roll test made for them. This is great for having our Blade Guard and Adrax unit smash out some Catan or Deathwing Knights. War-Tempered Artifice on that Gravis Captain just gives him +3 to strength to his melee weapons, giving his Power Fist strength 11 instead of strength 8, which will help punch up to some of those toughness 10 monsters and vehicles. This list has a lot less vehicles than a normal Firestorm Assault Force list. I'm also taking a guess that, like me, a lot of us do not have a pile of these transports in our collection. This list is for those who want to still play Salamanders without as many transports, but still a strong list in game. Instead of going through every rule and unit in the list, we will focus on a few things that the list is built around. That way you can all tweak things if you want to. The majority of the damage in this list is going to come from medium or close range. What rules in the Firestorm Assault Force allow us to do this even better? And what characters and abilities help push this even further? What is the general game plan of this list? The detachment rule allows the whole army to advance and shoot. The +1 to strength on the weapon profiles in this list is very helpful. We do have to be within that 12 inches though. Melt weapons go from strength 9 to strength 10, and flamers go from strength 5 to strength 6, or strength 4 to strength 5. Great for those toughness 10 vehicles and monsters, and those flamers into light and medium infantry. It buffs our aggressors, Infernus Marines, and Eradicators in this list. And even the Redeemer's torrent weapons will get the detachment rule. The Redemptor also likes assault to get some good line of sight. There are two stratagems I do want to focus on for this list. The first one is Crucible of Battle for 1 CP. Your shooting or the fight phase, 1 Adeptus to start each infantry. Until the end of the phase, each time you attack the closest eligible target within 6 inches, add 1 to the wound roll. This is the first stratagem I really wanted to focus and build the list around. +1 to wound in shooting or melee if within 6 inches. Without as many transport stratagems to use in this list, the idea is to be using this stratagem every shooting and fight phase when possible. Oath of Moment now gives +1 to wound, so now we can potentially have +1 to wound on 2 different enemy units. That is very strong. The aggressors in the Ajax unit love this stratagem. If we can get within 6 inches, it is great to add some extra punch to Eradicator's anti-tank shooting. Immolation Protocols is the next stratagem for 2 CP in your shooting phase. Torrent weapons until the end of the phase gain the Devastating Wounds ability, and there's no cap with this stratagem. This stratagem is more for the aggressors in the Infernus Squads. 2 CP is expensive, but with Oath of Moment for +1 to wound and then throw this stratagem on it, the damage output for units rerolling the wound roll is insane. The aggressors have twin linked in ranged and melee to get those rerolls, and Vulcan Hastan in the shooting phase can pick an enemy unit that our entire army gets to reroll its Melta and Torrent weapons into. So you combine that with the Infernus Squad, you can get some really good damage. And here is some of the key units I've put in this list to take advantage of some of these stratagems. Vulcan Hastan gives that army-wide Torrent and Melta reroll the wound roll versus that enemy unit. His ability to help hold a certain objective in no man's land is great. Having him attached to 10 Infernus Marines makes taking that objective that he's on much more difficult. Ajax Agatone gives his unit reroll the wound rolls in melee. The lieutenant in the unit adds ignore modifiers, lethal hits, and fallback in charge. You attach both those to the Blade Guard to make a tough, deadly unit. The Captain in Gravis is simply to reduce the cost of Immolation Protocols from 2 CP down to 1 CP, or the Gravis Captain could use Crucible of Battle for 0 CP. The game plan for this list is quite simple. Use the 2 scout squads to get early board control, pick a relatively safe objective in no man's land for Vulcan to hold on to all game once he gets there. Because you pick that objective before the game starts, you get to that objective, Vulcan now has a 4 Feeling of Pain, 10 OC, and a leadership of 5. The aggressors start in the Redeemer. You could put the Ajax unit in the Redeemer, but they have a 4-up invulnerable, so they could foot slog up the board a little bit safer. Or you could also just put that Ajax unit in reserves and rapid ingress it or bring it down in later turns. Then we simply run this army up the board, shooting anything that gets within range. Don't run out in the open all willy-nilly, of course. Play aggressive, but smart. This is an aggressive in-your-face list, handing out +1 to the wound roll to multiple units per turn, with a side of mortal wounds. We want to use that army-wide assault to be aggressive, get board control, and get damage onto the enemy. The next list for the Firestorm Assault Force is the Fire Drakes. It comes to 1,995 points, and this is our transport heavy list. The Warlord is Vulcan Hastan. The only other character in this list is a Captain in Gravis armor with the War Tempered Artifice enhancement. Other data sheets, we have a 6-man aggressor squad with the Flamestorm Gauntlets who will be joining the Captain in Gravis armor, a unit of company heroes who will be attached to Vulcan Hastan, 2 units of 3 Eradicators, then a big 6-man Eradicator squad. All have a multi-melta when able. A 5-man Infiltrator squad for keeping our home objective safe, 2 small scout squads just for getting some early board control. And then for our vehicles, we have a Land Raider Redeemer with the Hunter Killer Missile, Multi-Melta, and the Stormbolter. Then 2 Repulsor Executioners, both kitted out the same way with a Heavy Laser Destroyer, Iron Hail Heavy Stubber, and Icarus Rocket Pod, with all the other guns that come attached. This list has much more transport and long-range anti-tank support. We still want to keep Crucible Battle and Immolation protocols in mind. This list was not built to spam those 2 stratagems though. This was more made to take advantage of all the transport jank the detachment has. Less characters attached to infantry and more infantry with vehicle support in this list. The first stratagem we want to focus on for this list is Rapid Embarkation for 1 CP at the end of the fight phase. If your unit is wholly within 6 inches of a transport, they can jump into that transport. There is a restriction though. If that unit has disembarked from a transport that turn, they cannot use this, or if they can normally not fit into that transport. We do have to work around the restrictions of not being able to use this if the unit has disembarked this turn. We want to use this stratagem to get extra movement and survivability. 3 transport vehicles in this list, with mostly smaller infantry units, so we can fit them in the transports and bounce them around the board. This will be a much more CP hungry list using this stratagem regularly. The next one is Burning Vengeance for 1 CP. If the enemy unit shoots one of your transports, if the transport is still alive, you can use this stratagem to jump out the infantry that are inside the transport to shoot back at that enemy unit. That enemy unit must be within range of your infantry shooting back at it though, so you can't shoot Meltas 40 inches across the board. You have to shoot them to 18. This is a great stratagem to deter enemy units from shooting our vehicles. The downside, like I said, is the Eradicators that will be starting in the 2 repulsors only have an 18-inch range. The stratagem does give the transport tanks, the repulsor executioners, much more threat if we move them into the mid-board. It should help keep them safer from enemy deep strike shooting attacks. Heavies in the back line, they bring something down within 9 inches to get some shots onto your tanks. We can use this stratagem to jump out with the Eradicators that we will have inside the repulsor executioners to blow the enemy away. Let's go over the game plan for this list. This list will play a bit less aggressive. We still want to push it up the table though. We want to push the Redeemer to the center of the board to set up that deadly Overwatch threat. Each of the 2 smaller Eradicator units will start inside a Repulsor Executioner, while the big 6-man Eradicator squad starts the game in reserves. We want to spend our turn 1 staging for turn 2. The Executioners provide good anti-tank. It should give us a bit more freedom when moving up the board. Get on the objectives, hold the objectives, and keep the opponent guessing with all our transport jank. I know this list video is a little bit different than the normal ones, but I wanted to show 2 different lists for the Salamanders because I myself don't like how we have to take so many transports, which isn't a bad thing. I just don't have a lot of the transports myself. So I wanted to make a list for people who did have a lot of these transports and people who just wanted to try the Salamanders out that had a little more infantry but still had some teeth on the table for the Salamanders. Now let's finish the video with some final thoughts. Again, sorry for the late video. I really wanted a Christmas miracle for a 2nd Salamanders detachment. That didn't happen though. The changes have buffed the Salamanders using the Firestorm Assault Force, but will it be enough? I will be playing the Salamanders on the channel in the new year as we revamp the battle report side of the channel. If you have any ideas for a Salamander list, throw it in the comments. Subscribe for weekly battle reports, list videos, boarding actions, and other Warhammer 40K content. And like I always say, thanks for watching, thanks for stopping by.